since that day. This afternoon, Vice President Harris and President Joe Biden visited the Flight 93 Memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And a short time ago, we saw them lay a wreath at the Pentagon, a visit to each place where planes went down 23 years ago. Days like today are tragic reminders of the fragility of the American experiment, of American democracy, and reminders of how it needs a strong defender in the White House at all times. In another powerful moment last night, Vice President Harris addressed how Donald Trump does not fit that role.
It is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un, and it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors.
Last night was important for all of America to see, but the rest of the world as well. Politico reports on how those outside the U.S. felt about the two performances. In this reporting, quote, by the time the debate was over, several foreign officials from both U.S. allies and more neutral countries told me they felt more confident that Harris could handle the tricky personalities she would encounter while in the world's most powerful job. Composed, authoritative, and presidential, one European diplomat raved. She even managed to laugh at him. A senior European official marveled. Her ability to manage Trump offered assurance that she could navigate tough personal relationships. Given that international relations often come down to the nature of personal relations, this matters. It's also where we start the hour with some of our favorite experts and friends. Co-founder and executive director of Protect Democracy, Ian Basson, is here. Former chairman of the RNC, now the host of MSNBC's The Weekend, Michael Steele, is here. Ian, you first. Your thoughts on last night?
Well, you know, there's so much about American political campaigns that are poorly designed to help Americans and American voters figure out which candidate is actually going to be best for the job. And there are aspects of debates that are like that. You know, we all know in the past we focused on what sort of facial expression someone makes during a debate or whether they check their watch or not, when those things really don't tell us much about whether someone would be a good commander-in-chief or not. But there was something that happened last night that was unbelievably telling about who is fit to serve as commander-in-chief. And it was this: knowing full well what Kamala Harris planned to do in the debate, because her advisors telegraphed to Trump and his team that she was going to try to bait him, get under his skin, knock him off his game. Knowing that that was coming, he still couldn't resist taking the bait. It demonstrated how easy it is for him to be manipulated. And on the other hand, it also demonstrated how effective Vice President Harris can be on the world stage when she's preparing to meet with world leaders, knowing how, on behalf of the American people, she can get them to do what we need them to do on behalf of our nation. She showed she knows how to play on the world stage, and she showed that Trump is easier to play than a kazoo.
Kazoo. Best use of the word kazoo I've ever heard on TV. Michael Steele, I want to say this with all of the humility that I can sort of put behind it. I have no idea what will happen on Election Day. And there is no way to analyze what happened last night any way other than a roaring success for her and a debacle even by the incredibly unfair and asymmetrical curve on which he has scored. What do you do with that performance now that it's sort of in the books in the next 55 days to see that in all the ways it advantaged her, it aids her politically?
Well, that's a great question. I think what you do is a little bit of what Ian put his finger on, particularly the kazoo part, to show how much more of a leader she was than Trump. Whether it was on foreign policy, whether it was on domestic policy, even beyond the scope of abortion. which can, kind of, drives a lot of focus for people in a very important way. It's not to diminish it. But I think for a broader conversation for the American people who, quite honestly, are still learning who she is, surprise, surprise, and we could talk about why that is, given how the press did not cover her for 3 years. The reality of it is they now can take that hour and a half performance and break it down into bite-sized chunks and put it in 30-second ads on radio, on TV, on social media platforms. And you don't have to say a lot, but just show how she handled some of those moments. She didn't back down. She was looking forward, not backwards. She took the incoming when Donald Trump was waxing poetic on her race and spinning off talking about eating dogs and cats. And just show what this is for the country, what this means for the country, because at the end of the day, she still has to, and I thought last night was an incredibly important first step and an important start to show people that she can be president. She has to help them reimagine what the presidency looks like. Because even though, yes, you've had a black president before, he was still a man. He was not a woman. And that part of this equation is so important because no one wants to talk about it in polite company, but you and I know, Nicolle, and you've addressed this on your show at various points over the years. There's still this thing in the craw of people about women in leadership and power. And it's exacerbated when it comes to the presidency. She has to help break that down for people to show, no, she's not going to be a dangerous, crazy loon who, runs through emotions and can't fix an opinion. That was not the person you saw on the stage last night. And I think if they can take those clips out and show her in a very positive way being presidential, you can help break down that last piece of the glass ceiling.
I have a million thoughts. Let me try to pull out two. One, I actually think, Michael Steele, they should buy 90 minutes on cable access in the battlegrounds and show the whole thing. Because I think where Donald Trump will go is, oh, that's a selective moment. They didn't put, the 90 minutes make that point as well as any single exchange. But two, sure. Yes, she has to do all those things, but so do we. Right? What country do we want to live in? That's not all on her. That's on us. And even the way we describe his first public sort of stepping in the you-know-what on the misogyny front, the Access Hollywood tape. I wonder if for 9 years we should have just said what he said. The sort of conundrum, and I promise Mike and Forum, I'm not going to say it here. Don't get out the beep button on me. But the conundrum of Trump is he's so offensive that covering him accurately is impossible. You can't say what he said on the Access Hollywood tape. And so we've edited him for 9 years. And here we are saying things like, she has to show people. Why doesn't he have to show people? He has to show people that a misogynist would be a great leader for women in America. He has to show people that a felon can govern just as well as a non-felon, which is what we've always had. We still, and you and I are on the pro-democracy side, Michael Steele, but we still, 55 days out, are grappling with this reality that she has to show people that a woman can break this glass ceiling.
Yeah. You know what? That sucks. That's the hard, ugly part of this. And there's a lot of reasons why we are here now. The way we have covered Donald Trump and how our politics has dealt with him, the fact that Republican leaderships capitulated and bent over and exposed every part of themselves to his wiles and whims and did not stand up to the bully in front of them. The way the press covered him because he provided the appropriate levels of ticks and advertising dollars that made covering him that much more fun. He was entertainment. And you hear it all the time when people say, oh, well, that's just Trump. That's just Trump being Trump. Well, no, that's an idiot. That's an idiot that the country elected because they were afraid to put a woman in charge. Whatever hangups they had about Hillary Clinton, the guy standing in front of him, or in front of her, was a damn sight worse. And they preferred worse over her. And that sets the tone of the challenge that we have even to this day, that we're not honest about. And so, yeah, it's hard to say, yes, she's got to prove. But when you look at some of the folks in focus groups last night, they still go, well, life was better under Trump. I did better under Trump. Well, how many of your relatives died because of COVID and the way he handled COVID? What did you do when your business shut down? Who's responsible for that? When you had to close your business? That wasn't Joe Biden. In fact, Joe Biden created the lane that businesses could recover. And yeah, the consequence of the inflation we have, well, A, that was global, but B, the guy before him spent $8 trillion that came home to roost in your bank account and sucked out the extra money you had. So those realities still exist for people that they don't want to look at that part of it. They want to fantasize about the last 4 years, the 4 years before Joe Biden, as if somehow they were living in magical kingdom. And that's hard to overcome. And part of that reason it's hard to overcome because standing in front of them is a woman who could be the commander-in-chief of our armed forces, who could be the commander of the free world, the leader of the free world. And that's a leap that they weren't willing to take with Hillary, we saw, and now we're asking them to do it again. And that's why this 55 days is going to be a slog and it's going to be hard, and why she has to, do her part, which I think, again, was a great start last night to get people to come around to see, yeah, she can do this.
The other place, Ian, where all of his conditioning over 9 years serves him is that to his base, his praise of Viktor Orban isn't a liability. He's conditioned them to want and like a strong man. So let me show you what some of that sounded like from vice presidential candidate Governor Walz on our show last night.
When I travel, and we all see this, when I was at the D-Day memorial, it was clear that other countries, deeply concerned with Donald Trump coming back, deeply concerned that his inability to do anything other than a transactional shakedown of our historical allies. He was asked for one world leader who was with him, and it's Orban. My God, that's all you need to know. You've got a leader in Kamala Harris that understands the importance of these alliances. She understands what it truly means to stand up for the Western democracies.
You and I have been talking about Orban's Hungary as a blueprint for Trump and Trumpism for many, many months. It sort of surfaced in last night's debates. Your thoughts about how that conversation is sustained over the next 55 days?
Well, I think Trump validated what we all know to be the case, which is that we're living in a century in which the question is, will the American way of life prevail as the dominant way of life in the 21st century, and in particular for us here at home in the United States? Or will something less free, something more authoritarian, something that looks more like Viktor Orban's Hungary or Vladimir Putin's Russia be our future? Kamala Harris stands on the side of the American way of life prevailing, and Donald Trump put himself, in his own words, on the side of, as he said, strong men like Viktor Orban or Vladimir Putin. I mean, Trump fawns over topless pictures of a muscular Putin riding a horse the way teens in my day used to fawn over pinups from Tiger Beat magazine on their bedroom wall. And I think one of the things that Kamala Harris did so effectively last night is, and I'm dating myself with Tiger Beat,
I know those pictures,
is